to Litbit channel. Today we will see the poem Punishment in Kindergarten by Kamaladas. Let's we see about Kamaladas. She also known by her pen name Madhavi Kutty, was an Indian poet and author who wrote candidly about female sexual desires and the experience of being an Indian woman. She was born on March 31, 1934 in Tiruchur, Malabar Coast. Her mother, Nalabat Balamani Amma, was a renowned poet, and her father, V.M. Noyer, was an automobile company executive and journalist. Then she grew up in Kerala and Calcutta, where her father worked. Kamala Das began writing poetry at an early age, influenced by her great uncle Nalapat Narayana Menon, a prominent writer. Her literary career, Kamala Das was both in English and Malayalam. Her English poetry collection including Summer in Calcutta, The Descendants and The Old Playhouse and the other poem. Notable among her Malayalam work were the short story collection Danapu and the Member, Bala College Marnangal, her autobiography. In English is a shocking intimate work that became a classic. In 1999, she controversially converted to Islam, renamed herself Kamala Surya. Kamala Das received many literary awards, including the Asian World Prize for Literature in 1985. Kamala Das' fearless explorations of sexuality and her unapologetic voice continue to resonate with the reader, making her an ironic figure in Indian literature. Background of the poem, it exposed the autobiographical influence, Kamala Das' own experience as a child and her observation of the education system may have inspired the poem. About the historical context, the poem was written in the mid-20th century, a time when authoritarian and rigid teaching methods were prevalent in Indian schools. About the cultural context or the time reflects the cultural. Next topic exposes the cultural context. The poem reflects the cultural emphasis on discipline and the respect for authority in Indian society and particularly in educational system. Then about the personal experience, Kamala Das' own struggles with authority and her desires for individuality and self-expression may have shaped her perspective on punishment in kindergarten. Literary context in the poem is a part of Kamaladas' largely body of work which explored the themes of identity, childhood and social critique. By understanding the background of the poem, a reader can better appreciate the nuisance of Kamaladas' critiques of authoritarian education and her advocacy for a more empathetic and nurturing approach to teaching and learning. On a setting of the poem, a kindergarten classroom location, then during a school day when a child are gathered in the classroom. Then atmosphere is a formal, authoritarian and disciplinary. The social context of the poem is a hierarchical relationship between the teacher and the students, with the teacher holding power and authority over the children. The setting of the kindergarten classroom is significant as it highlights the vulnerability and the innocence of the child who are still learning and exploring their surrounding. The contrast between the expert nurturing environment of the kindergarten and the harsh punishment meted out by the teacher adds to the poem impact and critiques of authoritarian education. At that point of view in the poem, Kamala Das critiques the authoritarian approach to education and the harsh punishment meted out the children. The poet shows understanding and compassion for the child's distress and vulnerability. The poem reflects on the long-term effects of punishment on child psyche and emotional well-being. Kamala Das highlights the contradictions between the expected nurturing environment of a kindergarten and the harsh punishment inflicted upon childhood. The poet prioritizes the child's perspective of feelings rather than justifying the teacher's actions. By adapting this point of view, Kamala Das challenging traditional authority and discipline and advocates for more empathetic and nurturing approach to the education. Thus highlights the importance of understanding and addressing the children's emotional needs, critiques the social emphasis on discipline and conformity over individuality and self-expression. The theme of the poem is challenges traditional notions of discipline and authority in education. Then the poem highlights the child's vulnerability and distress in the faces of punishment. After that, the poem conveys the emotional impact of punishment on young children. Poetic device in this poem. First one, imagery, vividly descriptions of the classroom, teacher and child's emotion. After that, a metaphor, lines of punishment compares punishment to physical boundaries. After this, the simile, falls like a stone, compares the teacher's anchor to a heavy, impactful object. After she includes the personification, the teacher anger is given human-like qualities. She explained enjambment also, sentence or phrase continue into the next lines without punctuation. And she explained genre also, the buzzes within the lines creates a sense of drama and emphasis. Next one is alliteration, repetition of the C sounds in chalk and class. Next one, symbolism. In symbolism, chalk represents the temporary nature of childhood mistakes. Next is she exposed the irony, the contrast between the expected nurturing environment and harsh punishment. Then she included free verse, the poem structures and rhythms mimic a natural speech pattern. She used repetition also, emphasis on punishment and shames, drives home the poem's theme. And conscious language effective in conveying the child's vulnerability and emotion. This poetic device helped the Kamaladas convey the emotional impact of punishment on children and critiques the authoritarian's approach to education. Rhyme scheme of the poem is not constant throughout the poem. However, there are some internal rhymes and near rhymes used in various stanza. Example, classes and chalk is near rhyme. Tears and years are internal rhyme. Deed and conceal it near rhyme. Things and heart that sings is internal rhyme. Crime and time is internal rhyme. Shame and blame is internal rhyme. The poem primarily uses free verse with a focus on natural speech rhymes and enjambment rather than the constant rhyme scheme. This creates a sense of fluidity and controversial tone, emphasize the emotional and psychological impact of punishment on children. Critical appreciation of the poem. The poem effectively challenged traditional notions of discipline and authoritarian in education. Next one, Kamaladas use of imagery creates a powerful and evocative portraits of the child experience. Next one, the poem conveys the child's distress and vulnerability, evoking a sense of emotional response from the reader. Next, she used of simple language belies the poem's complexity and depth. Weakness of the poem presents a one-sided views of the teacher and the educational system. After that, the poem critiques of authoritarian educations may be seen as overly simplistic. The critics of traditional educations may be seen as too harsh and confrontational by some readers. Let's see the outline of the poem. The poem begins by describing the lines of punishment, drawing with chalk, symbolizing the temporary nature of childhood mistakes. The class and tears creates a sense of contrast between learning and suffering. In second stanza, the child falls is not in the deed but in the failure to conceal it, highlighting the emphasizing on hiding mistakes rather than owing up to them. The teacher's anger is described as a heavy thing that falls like a stone, emphasizing its impact on the child. In third stanza, the punishment is not for the crime but for the shame of being found out, suggesting that the focus on maintaining authority rather than encouraging learning. The child's heart is heavy with shame and they wish to vanish. Thank you viewers, thanks for watching this video.